I was hiking the Appalachian Trail several years back, and I stopped at the halfway point of Harper's Ferry in West Virginia. My feet hurt, and I just wanted to get some rest and get some food in me. I knew a little bit about the history, which I will share with you because it's important to the story. Harper's Ferry is in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. It was a very important place during the Civil War. Abolitionist John Brown staged a daring raid in an attempt to overthrow the institution of slavery, which failed, but in the end was a major factor in starting the Civil War. Because of its strategic location on the railroad, troops from both sides of the Civil War moved through the town frequently. The town reportedly changed hands 8 times between 1861 and 1865. So enough history. I got my meal and was heading through town to wrap up my evening when I heard what I thought was the sound of pigs. That was strange because I was in the middle of town. It sounded like they were coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, but were also kind of far off. I glanced around the streets and didn't see anything. I just wrote it off as one of those things, and I was too tired to expend any more effort to try to figure it out. Then I heard moaning. It sounded like it was coming from down the street, so I slowly approached the next turn. I rounded the corner and saw a man in old-timey clothes struggling to get off the ground. He was pretty far away, and I cautiously walked toward him to see if he needed any help. By the time I got within a few feet of him, he was on his feet, but his back was to me. I stopped and I got a very bad feeling. He slowly turned toward me and raised up his arms. I could see he was a light-skinned black man, but I also could see that his clothes were torn with bloody gashes in his body. He had a huge slash on his face and his throat was cut. He moaned and started staggering toward me. I froze for a few seconds. He got closer and I could smell death and rot on him. Finally, I made my feet move and I turned and ran. I felt his hands brush my jacket, but he didn't catch hold. I made it a block away and turned back. All I saw was an empty street. Then I heard the sound of the pigs again. And thought it couldn't get any weirder. I didn't stay and I bolted out of there. The next day I would do some cyber sleuthing and find out about a man named Dangerfield NEWBY, who was part of John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Town residents attacked Brown's raiders, but because there was limited ammunition, they attacked with pikes with 6-inch spikes on the end. One of the jabs hit NEWBY in the throat and he was killed. Other residents went a little crazy and repeatedly stabbed his body and then cut off his limbs. They left him in the alley for the hogs to eat. Other residents has seen his ghost. And I know on some nights, when I can't sleep, I think about a man who fought for his freedom and died. Then I hear the hogs. I'd been working on the rails all my life. I started out as a kid following in my father's footsteps and was a brake operator. Eventually, I became an engineer. You see all kinds of things driving the train. A house on fire as you steam by, high school football games in a flash. One time I looked ahead of the train and saw a woman crying. I reached for the brake even though I knew I couldn't stop in time. I looked away before I heard the thump. With all the strange things I saw, The strangest was in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. I'd made that run 100 times. Harper's Ferry is on an important railroad route that makes its way through the mountains and over the Shenandoah River. We had to make an unscheduled maintenance stop at their old rail station, which is now a visitor center. The mechanical problem turned out to be nothing serious, but while we were stopped, I saw a woman in tattered black clothes with her head down inside the station. She shambled along without looking. I watched her pass by the window, and when she disappeared out of sight, I waited to see her pass by the next window, but she never did. After a few moments, I walked forward to see inside the building, and it was empty. I scanned the area, and she was nowhere to be seen. The air inside was filled with the smell of smoke. I felt a chill run up my spine, and I backed away. It was getting dark when we got back underway. I didn't tell any of my coworkers what I saw. They'd just think I was crazy. We headed across the train bridge, and ahead I saw a glow. As we got closer, I saw it was a fire, and then I saw a woman fully engulfed in flames. I could hear a wailing scream ahead. I slammed on the brakes, but there was no way we could stop in time. I waited for the sound of the impact that never came. The flames exploded and the screaming died off. Flames flowed around the cab of the engine. I looked out the windows and on both sides saw no hint of a fire or a body. My hands were shaky as I throttled back up to speed. Later, one of the crewmen would ask me what the slowdown was all about, and I made an excuse about seeing a dog on the tracks. When we ended our run, I ran into an old timer who just liked to hang out at the office after retirement and share old stories. He must have seen something in my eyes. He asked if I'd come through Harper's Ferry. I said yes, and he asked, "Did you see Screaming Jenny?" He wanted to explain about Jenny, as she is known. She had no family or money, and she lived alone in an abandoned building near the tracks. One day, while warming herself and eating by a fire, her clothes caught fire. She ran for help as her clothes continued to burn, and she didn't notice that she was running right into the path of a train. It killed her instantly. The old timer said he'd seen her years ago, and he never forgot. I still make that run and pray every time that I never hear that scream again. I was a graduate student in history studies, and my thesis took me to historic Harper's Ferry, which is closely tied to the Civil War. There is so much history in this small town. I wandered its streets and talked to the local historians. The town is the site of John Brown's famous raid to start a revolution against slavery, and during the Civil War, the city changed hands between the Confederate Army and the Union armies many times. Gathering all this information led to many long days and trying to cram as much data to bolster my final thesis as possible. One night, I was walking back to my hotel when I heard a strange sound. I spun around trying to locate the source but could see nothing. The drumming would fade in and out, and I was really starting to unnerve me because at some point it felt like it was following me. I would stop and it would continue for a few seconds and then fade away like a dream. I quickened my pace, making it up the hill, and the drumming started again. It was louder than ever. It echoed off the stone buildings and started to drive me a little crazy. At one point, I thought I saw a small boy in an army uniform, but it faded before I could see any details. Then the drumming stopped, as if it was cut off by a force, and then I heard a scream, followed by a thud, like a body hitting the ground. A small voice cried for his mother, begging for her help and wanting to see her face one last time. This terrified me more than the drumming. The boy cried for a few moments, then it faded away. For fear of hearing either the drumming or the cries, I ran up the hill. Later, I would ask a local historian, and he would tell me the story of a Confederate drummer boy who was thrown from the window of a local hotel by a drunken Union soldier and died in the street. Others have heard his drumming over the years. He went on to say the boy was taken to a local church, which is now in ruins. I decided to check out those ruins, which are located next to the newer church which replaced it. I walked among the broken stones, trying to get a feel for what sadness occurred there during those years of the Civil War, as many soldiers had their services there. I stood in silence, and then I heard the drumming again. It faded up softly and got louder. It was all around me. At one point I thought I saw the boy, but the vision faded as quickly as it appeared. I ran from the ruins, and I felt like I was being followed by the drumming that went on until I cleared those ruins, and I never looked back.